The Christmas break had just started and the Steam Winter Sale had just begun. Aside from generally enjoying time with my girlfriend and a small trip we had planned, I had 3 weeks with absolutely nothing to do. I was scrolling through my library and had no real desire to play anything. I went to my wishlist and saw Persona 3 Reload. It was on sale for $71.97. It had been set in purgatory on my wishlist for a while because I had always told myself, as we all do, I'll get around to it. But today, something was different. I bit the bullet, and about 15 minutes later, the opening animation starts. The protagonist selects the intro song, and what happens next was me holed up in my room, spending the next 3 weeks and 100 hours completely obsessed with this game. This is my review of Persona 3 Reload. Firstly, I have to give praise to the team at Atlas, who definitely know what they're doing when it comes to making and optimizing their games. I played this on PC with an Nvidia RTX 3080 and an Intel i7-10700K. I also hooked up my PlayStation 4 controller and the entire game worked perfectly. One thing I'll definitely give the team credit for is the level of polish on this game. I only experienced a few instances of a fade to black, as it would take a few seconds for a day to load. Now granted, this review is coming out nearly a year after the game's launch, but I also experienced this with my original playthrough of Persona 5 on its release back in 2016, and the fact that it just works is more than can be said for some games. Now, Persona 3 Reload is a remake of the original Persona 3 game from back in 2006. Because it's a remake of the original, this means it doesn't include any of the additional content from the first remake, Persona 3 Fez, but it utilizes all of the original content and brings it into the modern day using the same graphics and combat style of Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. The story in the game I'll keep mostly spoiler free, limiting it as much as possible to the first few hours, since like with all Persona games, the fun is in experiencing the story. But I'll give a brief rundown for a bit of context. So the story kicks off with the protagonist transferring to Gekukon High School in the city of Iwatodai. After hopping off the train at Iwatodai Station, the protagonist first encounters an event that we later come to know as the Dark Hour. The Dark Hour is a hidden hour that can only be seen each night at midnight by those who have awoken to the power of Persona, which is a manifestation of their inner self. They can then use this power to fight against the shadows that roam the Dark Hour. The Dark Hour is home to Tartarus, the Tower of Demise, which is where the bulk of the dungeon crawling and combat takes place. The game itself juggles two core mechanics which play on each other. The dungeon crawling during the Dark Hour, balanced with living your day-to-day life as a high schooler, which is all encapsulated in a calendar system. The calendar runs daily, with the bulk of the game taking place between April and January. Each day is typically split up into a daytime segment and an evening segment, unless there's an event happening such as exams, which could take up a full day or more. On a standard day, you'll get to choose 2 activities, which range from hanging out with friends, working part-time, studying, and so on. These activities will typically help you increase your stats, such as your social links if you're hanging out with your friends, or your social stats if you're doing other things like eating at a restaurant. Throughout this, you can also do other activities that won't take up time, such as buying and selling items, completing requests, or receiving blessings from the fortune teller to help you inside Tartarus. Leveling up your social stats are needed to unlock things like new menu items at restaurants, locations, and they can influence how well you perform at school. Courage, for example, unlocks Escapade at rank 2, and Charm unlocks the seafood platter at Wakatsu's Kitchen at rank 3. Your social stats are also needed to unlock certain social links, such as Yukari, Fuka, and Mitsuru, which need their respective social stats maxed out in order to begin their social link. Your social stats can be leveled up by eating out, studying, or playing games at the arcade as a few examples. The social links, on the other hand, are the heart of the Persona franchise. The social links are the connections that you make with the people of the city. Most of these are formed quickly with little requirements, but require time and dedication to nurture and fully mature into unbreakable bonds similar to real life. These social links allow you to experience different concepts, as small as someone building up the courage to stand up for themselves, to the effects of divorce, all the way through to the inevitability of death itself. I was able to unlock all the social links quite easily in my playthrough, but unfortunately I wasn't able to fully complete all of them. My first go around, I managed to complete all but 3 of them. The weakest one in my opinion was Maya, an online friend you meet in a video game who could only be accessed on Sundays. She'd like to talk about the stresses of her job, which is fair enough, but after a while I just found it depressing. The rest of the social links that I experienced were really good small stories, but a few notable ones for me were Maiko, who is a child struggling to come to terms with her parents going through a divorce. Mutatsu, an old monk who, in contrast to Maiko, is living with the regret of letting his wife and son go. Bebe, a French transfer student who's looking to make new friends and experience all that Japan has to offer. And finally, Igus. She's part of the main team, and her social link unlocks quite far into the game, but is well worth spending the time on. She's a robot, and her story is about her discovering her emotions and humanity. In particular, there's a small snippet during her rank 9 interaction which hit especially hard for me.
Life is both short and finite. That's what makes it so invaluable, and why one feels that it must be cherished. When you think about it, it's a miracle that 2 given people are able to ever meet in this chaotic flow of time and space. I believe that's why we find happiness in forging bonds and relationships with others. And it might be the true joy of being alive. It can be sad, but at the same time so warm. Beautiful because it is destined to end.
This interaction in particular really got me thinking about my girlfriend, and just how many events had to go the way they did for us to even meet. There are also special interactions with the other members of the main group that are indicated with 2 exclamation marks above their head that don't count towards social links, but are still important as they help deepen your relationship with your companions and give more context as to who they are and why they are the way they are. These interactions will also help you fuse special personas upon completion that you can't unlock any other way, so you should make sure to make some time for them when you can. My general suggestion would be to try and increase your social links during the day, as social links are typically only available at certain times during the day, and then focus on increasing your social stats at night. Quite late into the game, you can unlock an item called the Dating Site Note, which can give you a small boost to help speed up the progression of your social links, which utilizes the PC in the dorm at night where you otherwise wouldn't be able to. For the completionists out there, I'd further recommend you focus on the school-based social links first, since there are times throughout the game when the school is closed, like during semester breaks, and these links aren't accessible at that time. An alternative during the evening is to go and explore Tartarus. Tartarus is the ever-looming tower, only present during the dark hour. Tartarus is broken down into sections that are blocked off by border floors. These sections are visually broken up as you progress, and each new section is unlocked as you progress through the game. With over 200 floors in total, each section is made up of a combination of static floors, which always remain the same. These are typically made up of border floors, which signify the end of a section, and gatekeeper floors, which act as mini-bosses scattered throughout a section. And then there are dynamic floors, which are randomly generated every single time you step into Tartarus on a new day. These contain loot chests, shadows to fight, and occasionally people who have accidentally wandered into Tartarus. After progressing the story, you'll also start to encounter monad doors and monad passages, which contain stronger enemies, but defeating these enemies offer greater experience and rarer loot. The monad passages especially should be completed when you can, as these unlock additional Arcana cards, which can be picked up during shuffle time and offer temporary bonuses during your Tartarus run for the night. Shuffle time can be triggered after combat and contain buffs like extra experience, extra yen, or the Arcana cards, which have lasting effects such as additional loot after killing enemies for the night, or permanent buffs to you or your personas. Now, speaking of the combat, the turn-based combat in this game is just amazing and is an absolute spectacle to behold. The core loop is super simple, but the animations, the audio, and the visuals just scratch an itch that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. The loop consists of using different move types until you find an enemy's weakness, and then exploiting that weakness to knock them down and triggering an all-out attack. The combat system also gives you an extra turn after you've found a weakness, or you can alternatively pass that additional turn to a teammate, which allows you to chain moves together to down multiple enemies in one go. This is what I mean.
This is beyond the level of an ordinary shadow. Watch yourself.
Don't dodge it!
Yori avoided the attack. Great show of skill.
Let's screw that up! Right one!
Yori avoided the attack. Great show of skill.
Now's the time. Come fight! Persona! I'll give him hell. Go for it, Herbie!
Enemy down. Get that up, Yori.
Persona! Like this!
What to do?
The enemy's You won. Now let's move on.
The simplicity of the combat's game loop is a testament to just how well designed and intuitive this is. Even after 100 hours, I still catch myself bobbing my head to the music as I'm slaughtering shadows. I did find the randomly generated floors of Tartarus did start to get a little tedious towards the end, but this is more of an issue with the system being brought over from the original Persona 3 and has since been massively improved upon in the newer Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal games. But the combat was more than enough to keep me coming back for more. Now, the combat is all possible through the use of your personas. There are two ways to obtain new personas. They can either be randomly dropped during the Shuffle Time event, or by fusing two personas together to form a new one in the Velvet Room. The personas are where the systems blend together, as your social links provide bonus experience to a persona when it is fused, and the higher the social link, the more experience the persona receives. This system is genius, as it lets you grind the level of your personas without having to actually experience the boredom of the grind. Finally, as the calendar progresses, you'll start to encounter the big bosses of the game, the full moon bosses, which, as you can guess, only appear on a full moon. These are the story bosses of the game, and each one has their own gimmick to make each one new and exciting. Make sure you're properly prepared for these before the full moon, as they can present a nice little challenge throughout the story. Persona 3 Reload is without a doubt one of the best games I've played in a very long time. The story, the combat, the music, even just down to the UI, which had me happily flipping through the menu just to see the different animations. It's a game that had me reflecting on my own life and my interactions with the people around me. I also found myself losing days at a time, just telling myself I'll play one more in-game day, or I'll just finish this section of Tartarus and be done, only to have progressed an entire month with the sun peeking out through the curtains. If you haven't tried a Persona game before, please go out and try one. The stories, the combat, the music, all kept me gladly coming back for more. And if you've been looking for a game that you can just sink hours into, I strongly recommend Persona 3 Reload.